Welcome to the Bureau of Citizen Detectives, the officially unofficial podcast for Yellowjackets on Showtime. I'm Jim.
And I'm Pete.
Hey, Pete. How's it going? Aaron could not be here this evening. He is out of town. He's off with his family in Florida. And so we have, but I want to make some kind, is there a substitute that comes in to kick a soccer ball during a game? Like a pinch hitter, but for soccer. They don't have those, do they?
I wouldn't know. I mean, I'm not that familiar with the sport, to be honest.
I'm not either. Anyway, whatever they call them, you're one of those for us, Pete. I thank you for being here tonight. You want to tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do, first of all?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm Pete Peppers. I have a YouTube channel under that name. I've been making videos and mostly recaps, episode recaps and things while TV shows are on. Been doing that on YouTube for quite a while. Recently, through the Bald Move Network, I started a new podcast I'm doing with my friend Courtney. And we're going back through and we're rewatching Breaking Bad all the way through and giving it a close watch and breaking things down and seeing how it holds up. And that's been a lot of fun. Hopefully in the future, I'll be doing some more. Right now on my YouTube channel, I'm doing Yellowjackets. I'm covering the same show. So it's at least one episode a week and one video a week there. And hopefully some bonus stuff coming out in the next couple of weeks too. So yeah, that's pretty much who I am and what I do.
Cool. Yeah, we've actually been, Aaron and I have been over on that Growth, Decay, Transformation podcast, the Breaking Bad rewatch. That's a lot of fun. So yeah, if you're a fan of that, go check it out. Or you're obviously a fan of Yellowjackets if you're here. Just go check out Pete Peppers over on YouTube. Good stuff. Pete, what did you think about this episode of Yellowjackets?
Well, it's one of those things. It's a really Yellowjackets episode of TV, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Like most things that happen in this little show here, there were some things that I liked and thought worked better than others. And really, the first time I watched it, especially, I enjoyed it a lot more when I rewatched and broke things down in the process of making my video about it, like where I really started to look at how things were connected. The problem the first time was that there was just so much going on, which is something that, happened when I watched the first season too. It's like they're doing so much. And I like that. I mean, I think that's a good idea to take chances and do as much as you can rather than play it safe. But the reality of that is that some things work better than others. And sometimes it's just little things, like I said, there's so much going on that it just feels a little all over the place at first because we're watching it really trying to pay attention to everything and pick up on what's important. And you got different timelines. You got so many different characters that are doing different things in different times. So I think, if I had to say, I would say that it just takes away from the central thing of this episode. What I come away with is, it's really about teen Shauna and the situation that she's in. And, then we got this really big moment at the end that involves everyone. And I just feel like there's just it didn't hit as like hard as I wanted it to maybe, but some of that just comes down to little stylistic choices. And the one was the way that the camera was flying through the air right before the snow falls on the pyre. That made it feel like they were really putting their hands on the scales of like there are supernatural forces here. And then the other one is weird, but the Radiohead needle drop, I like Radiohead, and I like that song in particular, but the way they edited that, she's saying like she wants us to. Like at that point, the song is as loud as the dialogue. Like I don't know who's winning that. You know what I mean? Like I want to be there with the characters more than I want to, think about the nostalgia of the songs that are up from that period or whatever. But all of that is to say that I really do. I enjoyed the episode. I really like some of the stuff they're doing. I especially like that they did get to where they have crossed that line into cannibalism, because we know it's coming. And ultimately, I think what's going to be more interesting is how they react to that than the actual thing. So, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but I feel, I'm just as excited about wanting to see what's going to happen in episode 3 as I was at the end of the premiere. So I don't know. What did you think?
Gotcha. We might disagree a little bit on a couple of things, but I think in general, I feel you. This show is trying to do so much. And like you mentioned, multiple timelines, a large cast of characters in both timelines. And yeah, they haven't scaled that back at all this season, right? In fact, they've opened that up more by introducing Lottie and her crew in the future, or in current day, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to keep track of while you're watching the show. It's also a lot when I'm making, an outline after watching this twice, trying to go, okay, I need to write down these notes. What's happening in this scene? Where are we? And the way they jump back and forth so often, I think makes that even more, I don't want to say convoluted, because I think it's kind of a negative context, because I think they're handling it really well. It's just, there's so much going on. And then, the part where we might disagree a little bit is I really love that final scene. I think stylistically, it really worked for me. It's kind of like a hallmark of the show to push past a line that I guess I realized was coming, but I didn't realize they were going to do it this particular way. Like with, I guess I didn't realize Shauna was going to be the one to lead them there. Even after, she takes a bite of the ear, I'm like, okay, well, is this the time when it happens? Is this going to be, I don't know. It just surprised me how quickly all of the girls were just ready to say, yeah, let's follow the leader into cannibalism.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that a little bit, because, that was one of the things when I'm watching it, like I was really invested in the way that the group was fracturing, because I felt like that's what most of the episode was about. And then you had Shauna off on the side, and she's going through her own really heavy situation. But yeah, so I guess that's sort of what I was thinking. Like whenever we got there, I was pretty surprised too, because they weren't, it wasn't like they weren't hitting you over the head with the fact that they were starving. They were more showing that how hard it is for people to live together in this situation, So I was wondering if you thought that too, is that was a little bit surprising that they got there when they did.
So quickly. Yeah, I think you're right, because like they even make a point to say that the food is not gone, the food is just very low, and they've been rationing for a while. And I think that's like to its credit, kind of, that these characters, the tension is so high, not just because the food is not there, but they are very hungry. But the tension is high for a lot of reasons.
It would be very
the
hard to
dynamics
do
of these
what they're
relationships,
doing.
right?
Yeah.
And so like they were ready to like cross this line, even though food is not, it is their number one problem, but it's not gone. It's not like they've been starving for a week and a half and they need food, right?
Yeah.
They just made a soup this night. So it says that there's something more going on there.
Yeah. And that's sort of where, I like I said, I was happy that they did it. I don't see a good reason to string that along. But in the first episode, I was really caught up in this idea of how Shauna was on this slippery slope. And then, in this one, we just got this thing, thing. Like they can't really help themselves. It's like, how are you not going to eat it? It looks like a roasted pig out there.
That was amazing. Yeah. So that's what I mean stylistically. I'm like, really? That's how it's going to happen? You're going to have snowfall, put out just enough of the fire to where it just cooks her instead of cremating her, and then they're going to wake up to this delicious smell. Yeah, that's amazing. That's so Yellowjackets. I loved it.
Yeah, like I said, I when I rewatched it and when I was breaking it down and thinking about it, it definitely worked better. It was just in that moment, like to me, that as far as what I had been watching to that point, throughout the series, was this great tension about whether this is something that's really happening or is there supernatural forces involved. Mm-hmm. So that one camera shot where it goes through, it just really took me out of it the first time, because I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what does that mean? What's happening here? Like, this is really the wilderness is making this happen. It's providing them with this meal. So what does that mean? When really, like, what's more interesting to me there is the characters and what they're going through and how that's going to affect them.
Gotcha. Yeah, it didn't seem like just regular wind, right? Knock that snow out of the tree. I'm with you there. I was like, whoa, okay, they're really leaning on the scales here.
Yeah, that's what was my take on it.
All right. Well, we're gonna get to talking about all this in the full recap. Why don't we get to that?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, we start off in 1996. Shauna is taunted by the Jackie in her head, who asks her to do her hair and makeup. Jackie also tempts the very hungry Shauna by offering up a chunk of her flesh. The other girls inside are preparing the food and waiting for Shauna, and tensions are running high, and they boil over for Taissa when she finds a shit in the piss bucket.
The big mystery of the episode, huh?
Who did it? Yeah. You thought it was going to be, will they or won't they turn to cannibalism? No, it's who shit in the piss bucket.
I actually love this. This is just it just trying to imagine how it could be, like how the person could get away with it is fantastic.
Right.
But so I did want to ask you about this. Where did you land after rewatching it? Who do you think might be the person who's responsible?
I want to say Misty. The way she's acting, the way the camera is, going close up on her, the way she's suggesting, well, maybe it's a boy, maybe it's not one of the girls here. Trying to deflect, right?
Yeah, it's weird because I think that's a pretty good choice. The one thing that would make me think maybe not is that she did smell her underarm when everyone else did, like she was like, wait, is it me that smells bad? She was right there with the other ones. Like, and I thought generally speaking, nobody looked like they were guilty. Like you didn't, everyone seemed to be as surprised by the news equally or whatever. And so that made me kind of lean towards it being Ty, while she was asleep, but
sleep shitting. Yeah.
But then, she's tied to Van. So both of those, neither one of those is a for sure kind of choice, I don't think.
Yeah, she's able to escape. I know she cut the rope later, but maybe she slipped the knot that night and went downstairs.
When you gotta go, maybe. I don't know.
Whether you're lucid or not, you gotta go. It's hilarious. I love that scene because it's so funny, but it also just serves to show how tense everything is between everyone, right? Like something ultimately pretty minor, like, okay, it stinks for a little bit, but it can get between everybody and it can cause people to boil over like Taissa does here. She's pissed off about it.
Yeah, and it really points out the idea that there's going to be people that are taking sides, and if nobody knows why something happened, then people have agendas to, they think, oh, well, I don't like Misty, so it must have been Misty, or, whatever, like someone slighted me at the campfire the other day, and so they're on my mind, and I think it must have been them, because I mean, that room, one of the things that I really like about this season is the fact that the snow keeps them in that room together, and just thinking about how difficult that would actually be. Forget about the fact that you don't have enough food. You don't know if you're getting back to civilization, everything else, but like you are with, what is it, 15 people or something in one room with one fire, source of warmth or whatever. And you have all those different personalities, just banging into each other 24 hours a day.
Yeah. And you all stink. You haven't taken a shower, No, it's rough. It's rough. I always wait for them to cut back to Jackie's corpse in these scenes where Shauna's talking to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of glad they didn't in this initial scene, because when they finally do later in the episode, it makes it even more shocking.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing about that, I think this was one of the most effective ideas that they've had this season so far. And I think, like, you know, the way that she, you know, it's believable for her that she's going through that, like she's having these conversations in her head. And that's what I really liked about this one and this episode, is that she's, you know, Jackie's cutting herself. First of all, Jackie, you know, the actor does such a great job of being this version of Jackie. Like, you know, Shauna's internal version of her. And so when you're watching that, you're really bought into this conversation, that this is two people talking to each other, until she says, you're the one holding the knife. And then you're like, oh, that's right. Shauna is the one who actually is cutting that piece of flesh off of her arm, and will definitely probably eat that later, you know? So
yeah, really, she's been sneaking snacks, huh? I guess, between the ear and now this.
Yeah. And it's just the whole thing of, like, you know, well, this is the way that, you know, you're dealing with this situation, but everything about that scene is in her head. And you can see how that's going to be involved with so much of what happens in the rest of the series, you know, especially right at the end of the thing, how they're seeing themselves at this feast rather than, you know, tearing Jackie apart. A lot of interesting stuff there.
Absolutely. And it made me start thinking about this baby more, because I kind of lost track of that in everything that's happening, right? And then Jackie brings it up in this scene, and I remembered, and I was like, okay, so these snacks that she's taking might be in her own head justified by, well, I have this baby, I need extra food, I can't tell everybody about it, you know? And there's going to be a big fight. Like, we've seen how tense it is if I ask for more rations for an unborn child, right?
Yeah.
So maybe she's sneaking these snacks that way.
Yeah, because I mean, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, because you do get a hive mind in that situation too, right? And not everyone. That's why, like I said, I thought it was all going towards factionalization, like to where they're going to start breaking into actual groups that are opposing each other, because not everyone's going to go along with the hive mind all the time. You know, you're going to have the people that are going to buck against whatever the rest of the people want to do. So that's another good dynamic they got going there.
Especially when you have several people either directly or sort of unconsciously vying to be the leader here. You're going to have natural clashing. Also, it shows that I think Shauna intended that she was going to come here and do Jackie's makeup, because why else would this makeup kit be out in the meat shed? I didn't catch that the first time around, but is there a reason that thing is out here, or did she bring it out here to intentionally do her makeup?
It's a fair question. I thought that too, when not when I was writing my script, but when I was editing, I was like, oh yeah, that thing's just sitting there. What's up with that? You know, like when I was scrolling through the footage and cutting it up. And I don't have a great answer for that, except for what you said. I mean, that's the most rational thing. Like, nobody else hangs out in the meat shed except for Shauna. So yes, she brought it along, but the way it's cut in her imagination is it just sort of appears there.
Right.
So
is she trying to cover up maybe the bites, the snacks that she knows she's going to take? Because she can't be that crazy, right? She can't think that, oh, I could just put a little makeup on a chunk of flesh that I tear out and no one's going to notice.
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't think she's that, like, rational about it. I think it's all pretty irrational, but maybe.
Yeah.
I feel like
Jackie in the scene is questioning, like saying, oh, what are people going to say, you know, about how are you going to explain that? So that's what Shauna is thinking to herself.
Yeah. Everything Jackie says is something, you know, including like the makeup looking, you know, saying, hey, you're useless behind the cam or behind the mirror or whatever, in front of a mirror. That's Shauna saying to herself that, man, why am I not better at doing makeup? You know?
Oh yeah. And she's real bad at it. I mean, we see it later. It's horrible.
The reveal tells us that she is quite bad.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next scene with we go to the current day where Callie is preoccupied with the discovery she's made about her parents and breaks up with her boyfriend seemingly for no reason. He seems like an okay guy. I don't know. He's a little preoccupied with this phone, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot to say about that other than he's not really paying attention to what she's talking about, and she's a typical teenager in a relationship, I guess, that's got other stuff that's more important. So he doesn't really serve a great purpose for the rest of the season, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not really like certain why they had him around, because I don't recall him ever doing anything of importance.
The most important thing about him was that Shauna masturbated to his photo in the first thing. That was like a big
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was sort of like something that told us something about her character early on, like when we're first getting to know her, is that's a weird thing that she did. But yeah, beyond that, I don't really think that I don't think he's really crucial to anything else.
All right, let's move back to 1996. Van wakes in the night to find Taissa gone, so she rushes outside to follow her trail. Taissa is following the man with no eyes and almost walks off a cliff, but Van is able to grab her at the last moment. And then we see the symbol on the tree. And afterward, everybody talks about Taissa and Van talk about what happened, and Van suggests they talk to Lottie. Taissa, of course, says, "No way. Are you kidding me?" And you're not going to either.
Yeah, and you're not going to either. That seems like the most important part there. That's what stood out. I mean, obviously, it's cool to see the man with no eyes because this is something that is part of her whole story. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much there is to take away from this here. I mean, he does seem like, I mean, it seems like he's walking her to her death, right?
Yeah, and this is so weird because, like you said when we were talking about the pyre scene, it seems like the darkness is trying to give everyone a meal to keep them alive. Or maybe just intentionally getting them to cross lines. Taissa, it's trying to kill, seemingly. So is it because Taissa is skeptic? She doesn't believe in the things that Lottie is saying, and the darkness in general, and it's trying to kill her for that reason, and everyone else is trying to preserve?
Yeah, it to me, this is a bit of it's hard to say because it feels like there are multiple dark forces. I mean, I think.
Oh boy, okay.
But I mean, I don't know, because it also feels like this is a manifestation of this bad thing that happened to Taissa when she was a child, right? That's when he first shows up, is when her grandmother mentions the idea of a man with no eyes. And then whenever she's in these other situations, now that's what we know for sure, is that this shows up. She sees it sometimes whenever something bad's happening or whatever. Yeah, so I don't think there's anything in this to suggest that if that is a real force, that it's connected to the thing that made the snowfall.
Okay, which is what I'm calling the darkness. Yeah,
the darkness, like the woods or the cabin, the man in the cabin that they found and showed up in Jackie's death dream or whatever. Yeah, so yeah, it's, like I said, it was good to see him, but I don't know it answered any questions. And then, like you mentioned, you have the symbol there, so that even makes things a little bit more confusing, because if this is something that she saw when she was a child, how does that connect to this thing that's leaving these symbols all over the woods where they currently are,
And the other thing to I guess talk about in that context is Lottie's visions as a child, because she's been having the similar experiences since she was a kid. With that car wreck that happened. Here we have another car wreck in this episode. I don't think they're related, but she's been experiencing things for a lot longer than they've been in the woods. So
Yeah, because that's what, you mentioned that she said Van won't talk to Lottie either. And that kind of seemed like the emotionally important thing of that, because it, for all we know, Ty sees the man with no eyes all the time, but she doesn't remember it because she's walking around in a fugue state. Right.
Sure.
So that, that's really what I keyed up on, was the fact that there's a division that's going to come between her and Van because of Van's interest in what Lottie's doing. And that's been set up,
like it.
Since last season anyways. But, the thing that I was thinking about though is that, as you mentioned, Lottie had these premonitions, and her father was like, I don't believe in premonitions, so I'm going to take you to the psychiatrist and they're going to medicate you so that you don't think about these things anymore. Right. And so we know why her premonitions are coming back, because she stopped the medication. We don't really know. And we assume that Ty is having problems because of trauma, the trauma they're in. And so that's bringing that back up. What's interesting about all of that is that when you get into the conversations that adult Nat and adult Lottie have, is you get the idea that this is coming back now, because, like I said, we know why Lottie's starting to hear things or see things again. We don't know why Ty right now is starting to have stuff. I mean, was it just the election or whatever? And then stress, more than that, we don't know why Travis was freaking out and thinking that the wilderness was calling to him at this time. So it's a lot.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Those all seem like they could be 100% connected or not connected at all. I would buy both things at the end of the day,
So we're going to go back to the current day with Taissa trying to stay awake. Seemingly she's drinking thousands of coffees. She's trying to get some work done. There's a creepy moment at the very end of this scene where she's looking into several mirrors, and one of the reflections, without her turning to look at it turns to look at her.
Yeah.
That's real creepy. And you get this Inertia Creeps song from Massive Attack playing, and it's very like cool but also sinister. I don't know how to describe this scene, but I was freaked out by it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that after I looked at it, I was just wondering, when does she fall asleep? When does that take over? I mean, in the mirror, you can see obviously that's not her. Look, the reflection is something else, and you can't miss it. It's not very subtle whenever you look. I mean, it's clearly there for us to say, okay, there's two people inside this body or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where they're going with that. Because she seems to be awake. Is it something where whatever is happening to her when she's asleep typically can cross over into her waking life too?
Well, I mean, that's sort of what I was thinking, was that if she's doing this crazy sleep deprivation, then maybe it finds other ways to emerge, and which could make for a lot of interesting situations if you don't really know which Ty you're dealing with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there might even be one at the end of this episode, but we'll talk about that. That was an interesting scene. All right, we go back to 1996. Nat observes Travis talking to Lottie. She's not happy about that. They head out to the wilderness together and agree to split up so that he can search for Javi and she can search for food. I do wonder, like, every time we see them, they're out here, they're looking for food, but they're kind of looking for Javi more than anything. I wonder how much of the food situation Nat and Travis are to blame for.
Yeah, I don't know that we have enough information, but I get that sense too. I mean, obviously the winter moves things around. Maybe the animals go somewhere to different elevations or something at this time of year. I'm not enough of a mountain person to really understand that. Just
or this
for sure.
This could be supernatural too, right? I mean, this could be the darkness or whatever's out there pushing the game away so that they're forced into this starvation situation and they have to start eating each other. We don't really know what it wants, quote unquote.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit more later because I certainly have some questions that I didn't necessarily have before, and it'll make a lot more sense to talk about it then, I think.
Okay.
But as far as what you're saying about Nat and Travis, I think she's the rational one in that, and so I think she's probably just as hungry as everyone else, and she's trying to steer them towards getting food. So I think it's probably more than just his desire to try to find what's going on with Javi. But it's probably not. That's probably not helping the cause overall.
Right, right. So let's go back to the current day, where Lottie explains to Nat what her cult is all about, and she chews out her assistant for giving her the wrong shake. This is the one who got her hand and almost eye stabbed by Nat. Is this? So I'm trying to figure out what they're doing with Lottie in this scene. Is this trying to show us that she is two-faced? That on one hand she preaches, about this healing message of forgiveness and whatever for yourself, and then she just bites the head off her assistant for just this minor infraction.
Yeah, and what's funny is like if you look at the glass, it looks like it looks like not disposable. It looks like maybe it's a metal straw and it's like a nice tumbler of some sort. And she just tosses that in the trash. And I think all of that is pretty, I don't think, I think those were all there for a reason. And what I thought about when I was making my video was that it does a really great job of showing us that she's really good at explaining things away, spinning them in a way that sound a lot less dangerous or, just generally better. And it also shows us, like, you can see what she says, but then you can also see what she does. So what Lottie says is one thing, but who she really is and what she really does is something else, right? So
Pete, what you just said sounds a lot like a cult leader.
Exactly. It's we're not a cult. We're an intentional community that are here to use our trauma to become strength,
right.
and have our best lives. Yeah, that sounds great. But what do you actually do? You look kind of abusive towards the people that are in your flock in that last moment there. So yeah, I think what I'm hoping is that as we go through this, there's going to be all these multiple point of views that are happening at once. We're not going to be able to take anybody at their word because they're all in these intense situations, right? So, so we'll have like what we actually see that we know with our eyes, which we'll talk about a little bit whenever we talk about Travis. We'll know what they say and what that, what that kind of means through their background. And then, we have to put all that stuff together to become like what the truth actually is.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So still current day, Shauna tries to connect with her daughter, but Callie is very much not into it. This is another of those layers of like what a character says and what a character does, because she told her boyfriend that she was angry because her parents didn't seem to care about her. They couldn't care less what she's doing. And then here's Shauna coming into her room saying, hey, you want to hang out? Let's go to the mall. Let's go on a girls' day out. And she's not interested. So clearly she was not preoccupied with her parents being selfish. She's preoccupied with this thing with Adam. The ID that she found in the grill, right?
And I mean, also the affair. I mean, as a teenager, I'm sure that's pretty difficult to kind of, because I think that's always the situation, right? You love your parents even when you hate them when you're a teenager, when they totally, really annoy you. And she has like found out that everything she thought about them wasn't necessarily true. She didn't expect that her mom would be stepping out on her father like that, and things just escalated from there, Oh
yeah. I don't know. if she is going to be kind of the thread that unravels this whole thing. Maybe we can talk about that more with Jake, or I guess Matt, later in the episode. But yeah, she's definitely a weak link in their story. So Misty tries to get a hold. Misty tries to get a hold of Taissa, but she's not answering her phone. So she checks her bureau board post and sees that Putting the Sick in Forensics has replied to her request for help in hacking the cameras at the motel, and she replies to him to tell him to stop wasting their time. This is looking ever more. The saying, like, I think thou dost protest too much, right? Like, this is Misty getting too deep into protesting what is clearly like some good information that he's dug up. Like, yeah, it might be an affair, and it might be that, the husband found out, or that the mysterious lady friend, right, got tired of it and off the guy.
Yeah.
It's not a bad interpretation, and she is just apparently in there all the time telling him, go away, your idea is terrible. Everybody's taking notice.
I mean, Misty's smart, right? Like, she
is, but I wonder how smart.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. Does some of this stuff seem like she's a little bit, because that's what I was trying to figure out about this. I mean, I love this setup. I think it's great. I'm really looking forward to seeing these two characters together. I did think that, yeah, some of the stuff she's doing, for as smart as we're led to believe she is a little bit sloppy. But then, like, whenever she wrote the wild goose chases thing, she forgot the wild and just put goose chases. Like, that was just so funny to me that I'm like willing to let it go. The other stuff, just sort of like the downvote in the last episode, like that stuff is just it's a lot of fun to watch happen. You know what I mean? So
totally.
I don't know.
So the thing about Misty is she is very smart. She's very capable. Socially, though, terrible. I don't know how intelligent she is, because I think she gets by because people look at her and see kind of a weirdo and then underestimate her.
Yeah.
This guy is not doing that.
Yeah, this guy shouldn't do that, right?
Right. And I think if you don't do that with Misty, you can see right through the weird, awkward vibe that she's giving off, because she's really just not that socially adept. And so when she's doing things like downvoting and telling this guy to go away, replying specifically to his post and not to anybody else's, those are clues to other people looking who might understand these things a little closer or a little better, that he's onto something.
Yep. I agree.
So I don't know. We'll see. I was hoping that URL that they posted in there would go somewhere, but it's not a valid URL. You can't actually go to it. There's somebody who said, hey, try this website for the hack. Murderino Uno.
Oh, yeah. I like the names they came up with. Those are all pretty good.
Yeah, they're fun. Anyway, we go back to 1996. Taissa goes into the meat shed and sees that Shauna has been doing Jackie's makeup, and Ty gets the rest of the group to agree to cremate Jackie's corpse.
Not really a bad idea.
Yeah, no, I agree. They need to get rid of it, right? I don't know. How would you feel if you're out in the wilderness? Let's disregard, all the talking to your friend in your head and cutting off chunks of their flesh. Disregard all that. You're out in the wilderness. You want to bury your friend, but it's not an option. Do you cremate them? Do you wait until the ground thaws a little bit and then bury them? But the corpse is also going to thaw at that point. It's going to be just a bad scene.
Yeah,
you got to cremate them.
Yeah, I think cremation is the way to go. I mean, there's maybe things that you might worry about if you've never cremated a body before, which we should assume that none of them have really. But yeah,
what are those things? I've never cremated anyone, so I
don't
know.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know either, because I've never cremated anyone.
I thought you had some experience.
No, I'm saying that, as far as, like, there's plenty of cultures that do that burn their dead.
Oh yeah.
So I guess it's plausible, but I mean, I don't know. I think probably the skeleton stays behind at the end, doesn't it? I mean,
Sure,
that's sort of the reason why they did the thing with the dental records and the hands in the first thing with Adam. So like, there's going to be that's going to be creepy too. Whenever you have Jackie's bones around the cabin
True.
or whatever, but but I mean, otherwise, yeah, I think especially when you see that Shauna is hanging out there all the time with her, like that you're into the situation where that the overall mental health of the entire group might be jeopardized if like she's doing weird stuff. So I think with Ty, I think Ty, it's a pretty good idea to get rid of the body, but I think it's a lot more about kind of how Ty is struggling with her own unexplained stuff, and so that makes her a little bit more prone to call other people out for their weirdness. You know what I mean? Like she's struggling with like, why am I like beating up my partner who I have to be tied to so that we can sleep, kind of thing. There's like some stuff that she can't really sort in her own life. So I'm totally understanding where she's coming from and like being like, this is not okay, and really drawing that line there in the way that maybe Lottie isn't in that same scene.
Yeah, like she's angry at herself, right, for sleepwalking, and that translates here then to Shauna doing what she's doing, which I think it's right to be sort of freaked out by that and worried about that. Nobody else's reaction is to get angry, though.
No. Yeah, so. And I thought that was one of the smarter choices they made, is to have that come through Ty and have that really speak to who she is and where she's at in her mind.
Yeah, especially because she was the one trying to help Shauna earlier, right? When she found out that she was pregnant.
All throughout season 1, and she was there whenever she was the one that went to her whenever Shauna was crying in episode 10, where when she finds the body.
Yeah. I was with Ty on this, but I knew it was going to be hard on Shauna. And the thing is, like, if the tree stuff doesn't happen and her corpse doesn't get cooked, you could almost see Shauna in the rest of this episode kind of coming to terms with it. I think there were a few moments where you're like, okay, Shauna's going to be all right. But boy, not after that ending, she won't.
Well, if she doesn't do the makeup, I mean, I think she is going to slowly but surely eat a good amount of Jackie over the next couple of weeks. I think once you cross that line, especially as we pointed out that she's pregnant, she's eating for 2, and there's cravings and everything else that are, I mean, I remember hearing stories of people eating like laundry detergent and other non-edible type things when they were pregnant, just because they had weird cravings. So
I would say humans fall into the non-edible category.
Yeah.
For me anyway, personally.
Yeah. I mean, in anything but a survival situation, of course.
Of course. All right, let's go to current day again. Kevin comes by the house to ask Shauna a few questions about Adam. She lies to him, and Callie comes in, bails her out in this scenario, but then asks her why the hell she lied to the cops about Adam, and she claims it's to protect Jeff's dignity, which nobody is buying.
Yeah, nobody buys that.
and I don't think Shauna was very convincing. When she's talking to Kevin,
not at all.
I think she started okay, but as soon as any crack in her story showed, and he said, well, we have text messages, then she was like, yeah, I had to stay in touch, but I'm not in touch with him now.
When you first heard him say that we have text messages, weren't you thinking that meant that he read those text messages and he understands like what their conversations were?
I assumed, but that might not be how it works. It
might
be they can't get the messages themselves, but they can get the records of the exchange happening.
Yeah, I mean, I that's sort of where I came around to it too, because I was like, why would you make up lies about something that is so easy to check? That seems really poor decision making. But he doesn't say that we read them. He says we know that there were text messages back and forth. Still, if they really do start to think about this, then there's just no reason to give them any information at all. And Misty's cookie was maybe not the thing that she needed in this conversation with him, but like still the sentiment stands. Don't tell them anything you don't need to.
Sure, I agree.
Because there's no body. I mean, it's not like Adam's a missing person. He's not. It's not an open murder investigation at this point. So,
and they tried to make it look like he was just gone, right? Like he had packed up and left.
Yeah, and they mostly covered it. You know, they mostly covered their tracks because they brought Misty in to consult on the job to make sure that they did what they had to.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Taissa. She gets home, finds Sammy waiting for her inside of her house. She calls Simone to let her know that he's here, and Simone says, I'll come over and get him. This is the setup. We'll see it pay off later. Misty's at work when someone shows up who piques her interest. I'm not quite sure why he piques her interest. Can you explain, like, what is it about maybe the conversation, or it's particularly his shoes and socks?
Well,
that yeah, what is the deal here?
If you remember back to the date that she had in the first season, when she was like, she was trying to get the guy to tell, like what he was into or whatever. And she's like, walks on the beach, and muscular calves was one of the things that she said that she was into. And so that's what I thought of whenever I saw it, was that he had these pulled up socks, and it's just like, man, those calves are just on display there for someone that has that kind of a thing that they're into.
Sure, I can see it.
I don't know though. I think it was a little bit. I mean, I think she's probably nosy about anything that happens there. I mean, it's kind of her personality to kind of know what's going on or whatever. And the way he was talking, it might have caught her interest otherwise, but it really did just feel like a setup though, so that she would notice him whenever he walked by. I don't know if he did anything other than that. Yeah,
it felt like a little bit the show leading me in a direction where it typically doesn't do that. Like here, it wanted me to notice that she's noticing him, though I couldn't really see a reason for her to notice him beyond the calves, the magnificent Elijah Wood calves.
I mean, the look he gives her is amazing. It's really the thing that makes it all work, is just that little sly smile. Because I mean, she's never met him as far as we know. And she certainly doesn't think that he's this poster that she's waiting for a reply from, so it's something else altogether.
Yeah. And then when she goes to get her lunch, she finds an envelope waiting for her, and inside is apparently a blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
And we'll see here in a bit what that comes to. We go back to 1996. Nat and Travis meet back up after searching for Javi and food. Nat shows him a bloody pair of shorts, Javi shorts, that she claims she found on a branch, and tells him that he's gone. But in reality, we see that she faked the whole thing.
Yeah. Good intentions is coming from a good place, I think. But if having watched TV shows before and paying attention to what happens, I mean, I feel like this is definitely something that's going to cause her problems in the future, this decision.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason they hadn't spoken for a while, right? In as adults. And I don't think it's all just, well, she was away at rehab or something. Yeah, I fully expect that this will come out at some point. She'll either feel guilty about it and tell him, or he'll find something she dropped in Javi's suitcase or something. Who knows?
Or Javi will just show back up at some point. I mean,
why is it that I don't expect Javi to ever show back up?
Well, I mean, because he shouldn't. Technically,
right, he's been lost in the wilderness in the freezing cold for months.
No jacket, nothing. He just ran off after Doom coming and has been gone for 2 months. And they're struggling to keep it together at the cabin. So and he's younger than them. I mean, he's a kid. So everything is so decidedly pointed to there's no way that this guy's alive, that I just keep finding myself thinking, well, then he must be alive, right? Otherwise, where's there a payoff in this at all? Like
True.
It's not going anywhere except, I mean, because it's like this right here is the emotional payoff for Travis. If he believes that's really his pants, then he mourns, so then where does it go from there? Like, I feel like, yeah, he should not be able to survive, so that he's going to be a vehicle to introduce something else, like however he survived is going to be something that's going to be important to the group in some way.
It could be that, or it could be as an adult, right? Because we know Travis is haunted by something as an adult. He makes it out, but if Javi comes back to him, similar to the way Laura Lee is seen to come back at the end of this episode, and we know that she died on the island, or on the island in the wilderness. I think it lost here.
Yeah, a little slip there,
right? We know that she died in the wilderness, so it could be something like that. Like he comes back 20 years later, and that's what kind of pushes Travis to do all this stuff that he does in this episode.
Where did you come down on this? Did you think it was a good move for her to do this, or?
No. Ultimately, I think it's a bad idea to lie to him, but I understand why she did it. Yeah. I think it is interfering with their mission to find food. I think having two people looking for food is probably better than having one person. It's very dangerous to split up in the wilderness like this. One of them could get injured and just never come back. But more than that, I think, like, yeah, it's just, what if he does show back up? I know it's not likely, but if Nat tells him this and then he shows back up alive, well, I mean, that's just gonna ruin whatever you have with Travis, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that anybody's gonna say to him when he comes in is like, we were so worried when we found those pants. And he'll be like, what are you talking about? I have the same exact pants I had on when I left. I don't know what you mean. Yeah, I think it was a good setup though. I really like what they're doing here with these two, because she just wants the best for him, and she makes a bad decision in the process of trying to make that happen. And
I think she's right about Lottie, like, giving him false hope, or potentially false hope, because, like, it doesn't look good, right? He's been out there for so long in the cold.
Yeah.
How could he survive? And Lottie's saying, no, I feel it. He's alive. So I'm with her on that too, even though I'm not with her on lying to Travis,
Yeah, you'd like to say, like, the right way to do it would be to sit him down, have an intervention or whatever, and say, look, right, we understand why you want him to still be out there, but you have to start thinking about reality. This kid, we all love him, and it's really awful the way this all played out, but, like, how could he possibly still be alive out there? Like, how
saw what happened to Jackie in one night, and she had a coat, right?
Right.
And that's going to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
But no, you're right. That's what needs to happen.
But that's weird. It's also another thing that I hadn't really thought about until right this second. And it's just that, everyone's starting to look at Lottie as the leader. You kind of see that a bit, and not everyone, but most of the non-main people, I guess. You kind of see them looking to her and sort of waiting for her to weigh in before they make any decisions and stuff like that. Right now, no one is doing the things that they need to do in that way, which is like, we need to confront Shauna about sitting with Jackie for 2 months, Jackie's corpse for 2 months. We need to talk to Travis about our hunter, like one of two in the hunting squad. We need to talk to him about what's really going on with him and make sure he's okay with the fact that his brother is probably dead, So you would like to think, hey, she could talk to him instead and just explain it. But you kind of get the idea that he's in a place, just like Shauna was in a place when people were asking her if she was all right, that she can't really confront the thing that's going on at the moment,
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's go back to current day, where Lottie explains to Nat how Travis died. He was apparently trying to, quote unquote, confront the darkness by getting close to death, but he got a little too close and he ended up dying. And she leaves out this detail about seeing Laura Lee's corpse screaming at her.
Yeah.
Nat swears she's going to stop her bullshit, but she can't leave because it's too late, so she's got to spend the night there.
Yeah. And like I said, I this is one of those things where I wonder about why he was so freaked out right at this moment.
Right.
Why he calls Lottie instead of Nat or somebody else. And what,
yeah, it makes
how
me
much
think
of what,
that
how much
Javi,
of what her story that she said can we believe, you know?
Sure. I mean, the show. So when the show shows us things, I'm much more likely to believe them, right? If it had showed me Nat finding pants on a tree branch, I would have believed that. But it showed me her digging around in the suitcase, right?
True.
So I believe that. I don't think the show is being dishonest here with the way it happened. But maybe I'm just being naive. I don't know.
So yeah, I think that it's probably a combination. Like he was freaked out. She did go there. All of that I think tracks with what really happened. I think largely what she says makes sense as far as him thinking that these other people had a connection with this entity by near-death experiences. All of that might be his motivation. But yeah, like as far as what's actually happening, one thing that I missed when I watched it the first time, and I don't know if you saw this or not. I didn't see this until someone commented on my video about it, and I had to go back and look. Because the way I saw it was that obviously we saw where his body was when Nat and Misty discovered him in episode or season 1. So whenever you're watching this, you're like, but he's right at the lower at the ground. You know what I mean? Like this is totally different than where he ends up.
Right.
And the way I experienced it when I watched it the first time was seeing her turn around after her vision and see him up in the air, and that made me think, well, if she was wrong about where he was, then maybe there's more going on there. But I noticed that when she turns, when she's having the vision of Laura Lee, you can see his body start to go up in the background.
Yeah.
So that becomes more of a question of is whatever showing her this vision actually the thing that's making him go up, and that's the reason why the buttons didn't work. And
right.
Yeah, so I'm kind of coming around on it and thinking that it's more true than I originally thought, and that as ridiculous as that sounds, it's probably because there's other forces at play, and that's why the buttons didn't work.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. That's how I'm interpreting it too. Because I did notice him on second watch, not on the first watch. I did notice him rising up as she turns.
Yeah, I missed that, and that was a big. It was a big. I spent a lot of time thinking about it incorrectly because I wasn't thinking that happened. So
yeah, it happens.
Yeah,
but that scene is just so creepy, right? Because him raising up, it's almost supernatural, right? You can imagine. Yes. Okay, well, she threw the controller down, or maybe she's seeing Laura Lee and her hand's still on the button accidentally or something, and the crane's going up. Or you can imagine it as the darkness is pulling him up to kill him, right?
Yeah.
As Laura Lee is coming in, clearly her corpse. I don't know what it is. It's. I don't know if this is a Lottie vision with Laura Lee, or if this is something that anybody else who was in the room could see.
Yeah, I was a little bit confused on that too, because my initial thought was that we're seeing it as a vision, and because it looks like she's in the attic of the cabin, which is not where Lottie is in real time. Yeah. But I don't know. You could say that for sure. I don't know if it's just a feeling or if it's it's a vision. It feels like something that you can't really say for sure. It's something that's it's through her experience of what she's feeling when she sees that. So
right, and that's mixed in with her scenes of getting the electroshock therapy,
it being in the baptized
to stop her visions, and
so there's a lot going on there.
Absolutely, yeah.
One other thing about that is that with Travis, when she says that he said that not to call Nat because she thought that she would make it worse. That felt a little bit like maybe she was twisting Nat too, because she's talking to Nat. She's saying that she's telling her this stuff to help her, to give her closure or whatever, and that just seemed like more of like just a rib than anything else. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if I was telling that story, I might just leave that detail out because this person who I'm trying to help is feeling terrible at the moment. I mean, she knows that that's going to make her,
I mean, the trouble is Nat's like, why didn't you should have had to call me. And I guess she could have said, well, I just didn't think about it.
Yeah.
Like
it all happened so fast and we just didn't really, but instead she's like, no, he actually did. Right before he died, he said that he did not want to talk to you because you would just make things worse. It
makes me wonder what's going to go down with them, between them in the wilderness, because they're already butting heads. Is there going to be like a battle for Travis's soul or whatever, between Lottie and her?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that the stuff that's going on in the past really helps what's going on in the present, because so far, I mean, adult Travis isn't that important to everything else that's been going on. He's really been more of a motivating factor for Nat in her adult story than something that we're really trying to get to the bottom of or something, so
yeah. All right, let's go back to Taissa. We're still on the current day here. She fell asleep and Sammy apparently went out the window. Simone and her leave to go find him. Still teasing us with these Taissa scenes. Get the payoff here in a bit.
Yeah, one thing though I wanted to say, going back and watching it again though, is how obviously Sammy is not Sammy in those scenes.
Oh, really?
From before.
Couldn't tell.
Yeah, because he was always kind of like afraid of Taissa, in the first season, like same kind of situation where he loves her, but he's scared because he's seen some things. And when you watch these now, he's so happy to be there, and he's like he just looks like a whole different. It looks like her the way she would imagine him rather than the way we've seen him before, I think.
Yeah, some wishful thinking. Okay, we go to 1996. The girls prepare to burn Jackie's corpse. Shauna fights to let her keep the jacket even though it's freezing and the other girls could use it. And importantly, I think if you're keeping track of this sort of stuff, and I most definitely am, the heart pendant makes its way from Jackie's neck back onto Shauna. Which we know, obviously, that's not where it ends up, because it ends up in that pit that we see in the opening moments of the show.
Mm-hmm. So did you read this as she wanted to protect her friend, like, give her some kind of dignity, or is she doesn't want to take it off because people are going to see that she cut a slice out of her arm?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. They do enough in this scene to tell me that, but they did some stuff in the previous scene, like I mentioned, with Jackie saying, how you can explain that away? Yeah. Well, how do you explain away a big cut on her arm? So
yeah, that's what I thought too. I was reading something right before we recorded this with the creators, and they were saying like, she wanted to really protect her friend and the way, the dignity of things. But I was like, well, why did you have that whole thing of her pulling the sleeve down and Lottie seeing that at the end then?
Yeah. Probably because they'll need Lottie to know some stuff about that later.
Yeah.
So that's a plot thing right there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we go back to current day. Callie is at a bar with her friend. She flirts with a guy and gets him to buy her a drink. And they reveal some of their background and seem to hit it off. This scene, I don't know about this scene, man. How old is Callie? 16,
teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd
must
she
have
get
a really good fake ID, I guess.
Can a cop? I don't think this is legal. I don't think what he's doing is kosher, man. He's buying an underage kid a drink to get information about her while he's off the clock.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought this was a little bit loose. I mean, everything, even Kevin just showing up at her house. To go back a little bit with that, it all felt a little forced. I mean, I think the indication is that they were both at their place, and he follows her, right? He's not. It's not just random that he sees Callie. I think that he follows her there. And so it's not really so much about, so I guess if we think it like that, then it's more about the fact that this guy will do things that you're not supposed to do. Like it's establishing him as a guy who has he's okay with bending the rules to try to solve a case or whatever. But yeah, like I that kind of took me out of when I was watching it too. I was like, so this cop is like really, I mean, not that I don't put it, I think about police and something that they're always following things by the book or something like that or whatever. Sure, but I mean, this is a character we haven't met yet. And so you're trying to figure out what's going on. And then, you're like, wait, he's buying a teenager shots, like, isn't there a different way he could have tried to go there or something,
I mean, there's no way this evidence is admissible. And it's, I forget what the doctrine is called, but there's like this fruit of a rotten seed sort of thing where like if you get evidence in this way that leads to other evidence, that evidence is also inadmissible. So there's and I think Kevin is right. Later he chastises him, right? Because he comes to him and says, yeah, I figured this out. And Kevin's like, no, you're going way too fast here. But he doesn't say anything about like, hey, you probably shouldn't have bought a 16-year-old a shot at a bar.
They totally overlook it. The whole there's no one. I don't think that'll ever come back up either. I think it's just that's the way they decided to do it. Was they wanted to show that Callie wasn't reacting well to what's happening, and so she's at a bar day drinking. I mean, she says day drinking and kind of elicits that idea of like this is not good. No, this is not a good thing that's happening here for this character.
Right. So. Yeah, I'll tell you, it wasn't my favorite scene. I didn't care for that, but whatever.
I agree with you.
Let's go back to 1996. Nat and Travis return to the cabin. Lottie sees the tattered, bloody pants and says Javi's not dead. Nat gets angry about that, confronts her, but they're interrupted by Shauna going over to Jackie's body and saying goodbye and burning it. And then Travis also kind of piggybacks a little bit on that to say goodbye to Javi as well.
That felt a little bit tacked on though, didn't it? I mean, like this is the end. This is the send off for that kid that we all liked in the first season. Javi, yep, just throw those pants on the fire. Let's move on.
Yeah, it'll probably be more than that, I hope. But
that's what I'm saying. Like that's another thing that makes me think that this kid is definitely coming back some point.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was also surprising to me that they just left before the body even really started burning. I guess they didn't want to. Shauna maybe, but like the rest of them probably want to make sure this thing burns, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't just, I don't know, cook to a nice golden brown.
That's what I thought was going to happen whenever they did it. Like when I was watching, I was like, they're not going to, it's going to turn out that they didn't really set it up right. And so it's going to cook instead of burning up, I didn't foresee that the snow was going to fall in, but I did like the words here, like the way that she sends her off. It was a lot more fitting than Javi's send off, but
sure.
Just sort of that idea of like, I don't know where where I end and you begin, and I'll never have another friend with you. I thought that, or another friend like you, I thought that really hit pretty good because, when you think about that time of your life, you really don't have relationships like that beyond that period of time. It's that weird time where you're going from being a kid to being an adult, and it's just there's just you end up going through that with people and having these situations that just don't come up later on again in life. So
forms.
I thought that was pretty good. I thought that landed pretty well.
I think it's weird that Nat chose pants as like the Javi identifier. Like there weren't any t-shirts in there that his brother might recognize, because pants are pretty nondescript, right? They're just cargo pants.
Yeah.
telling me like Ty doesn't have a pair of cargo pants, or like, I don't know.
Yeah, Akila was
Misty.
like, those are hobbies. Like, she knew right away.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. I couldn't tell you what my brother's cargo pants look like, but I could tell you what his t-shirt looks like, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't think too deeply about it, but now that you bring it up, it's a little bit of stretch.
Maybe he didn't bring any shirts. He didn't pack any shirts whatsoever. I don't know. Anyway, let's move on to current day again. Nat decides not to change into the cult uniform that Lottie provided for her and tries to sleep, but she's seeing visions of a hospital trip. It seems like it's her, and she's being given oxygen, and she's on a gurney and being wheeled through somewhere, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it. I thought it was in. I didn't pick up on the.
Is she stationary?
I thought so, but
okay.
You can't really tell. I mean, the main thing about that is you can't really tell. It's somebody has. My takeaway from it is that there's a lot of talk about near-death experiences, obviously with Travis, and that this is one that Nat herself did experience. So what does that mean? I mean, I guess I would just say that it's most likely that she OD'd, I guess, because we know she's a drug addict. It looks like Travis is there in the background, or, you can see him whenever the EMTs move.
Okay.
So
is this a time? Because the reason Travis says gives for doing the things he's doing is to try and get close to the darkness or get close to death so that he can figure out what the darkness wants. So he's seeing something related to the darkness when he's close to death. This is not close to death. They don't tell us that she saw anything, but do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I think that's the natural thing that you get to. That's the natural place you get to when you think about what's happening here. Is that she probably has something, because it's sort of like how Ty is so against everything that Lottie says because she has real supernatural kind of stuff going on, so she doesn't want to believe that it's real. It felt the same way like that to me. Like she would like to believe, and this came up in the past when she said that Travis didn't believe in any of this stuff, and then we see him, if what Lottie told us is true, he's making the symbol around his thing, and he's trying to have a near-death experience to get closer to this entity. So he actually did believe in it, maybe a lot. He might not have wanted to have anything to do with it, but he certainly believed there was something there. And so you get into this idea of like, what does she want to remember about Travis? She wants to remember that he never really cared about that stuff. He always really cared about her and this connection that they have together, and the way that they had, in their adult lives, that things were bad, but they always had each other, and that was enough. You know what I mean? That's the sense I got. So she has maybe something that she's hiding, that's something that she's seen that might make her more susceptible to whatever it is Lottie's telling her, and that there might be something to it, basically.
And there's something of it seems to me that this is happening much later, right after they get back from the wilderness, and maybe it's something where she feels maybe angry at herself in a way because she didn't believe it for so long, and then she had this experience that made me think, man, all of those times I told Travis this is not real, it's not possible, whatever, I was wrong about that. I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure they'll give us more information on that soon enough. We go to Misty reading the note that Putting the Sick in Forensics left her, inviting her to pretend to be the FBI and interrogate a guy who's been living at the motel the next day.
Probably Randy, right? I mean, Randy, we saw he was living there.
Oh, I didn't even think of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's amazing.
Which is going to be awesome, because he would be someone that they'd like to talk to, because he knows about, he's like the only person besides Jeff and Shauna that knows something about that blackmail. But he also knows Misty, so if they go in and repping like they're FBI agents, that's not really going to work exactly.
True, and yeah, the sick in forensics doesn't know that, so I hope it's Randy. That would be a lot of fun.
I just before we go away from these two characters, like how perfect is this as a getting like as a way to get Misty's attention, like he's got this, he finds out where she works, he puts a note in her thing, it's a puzzle that she has to solve, you know what I mean? He's offering her a date that's like impersonating law enforcement to solve a case. It's all for a good purpose, and you get to go and do this thing that's really exciting. I mean, this is like right up Misty's alley, like 100%, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, a first date with Misty is either this or an escape room, so take your pick. She's probably bored of escape rooms by now.
Yeah, so I think that this is going to be a lot of fun because she's supposed to be in opposition to this guy. She's supposed to be trying to stop him from getting too close to Shauna, and he just happens to be that perfect thing. But it also has to make you wonder a little bit, right? I mean, is he just upset about this post that he made and she didn't like? She downvoted it, and he thinks she's shitting on his theories, like. I mean, he found out where she worked. He found out where, which lunchbox was hers. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on here that might give you red flags about this new character, that he might have other motives than just wanting to hang out with Misty.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think he wants to crack this case. I don't know if he's trying to use Misty as a tool to that end, or if he's trying to just get her, come to some understanding where she'll stop working against him and work with him.
Right.
But I don't know. The former is more interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
So I hope it's that.
I'm looking forward to it either way. I think this is, this, as far as the present day timeline stuff is concerned, this is the most fun setup that they've had. A lot of the stuff that we were just talking about with Callie and Kevin Tan and all that, I could take it or leave it, but this is something that I'm getting pretty excited about, seeing how it plays out.
All right, let's go back to fake Jake, who's actually Matt. Tells Kevin that he talked with Callie and found out that Shauna was cheating on her husband. He wants to bring her in, but Kevin thinks they need more information first. Matt questions whether he's going easy on Shauna because they knew each other, but Kevin denies it.
Yeah, and it's a little bit, like I said, it's like, well, it's not like they found Adam's body and they got this hot murder case. It's just a missing persons thing, so it feels a little contrived, I think.
Yeah, I thought this guy was going to be like a doofus cop. He plays a doofus cop in Stranger Things, and I thought, okay, when I saw him in the trailer, he was going to be that again. He strikes me as like a smart guy, probably very effective at his job, but a little overeager. He's not, he hasn't been on the job long.
He's trying to make a name for himself, right?
Yeah. Or maybe he's just so like thrilled to be doing this job that he's pushing really hard to do it quickly. But either way, yeah, he's not doing it the right way. He's not doing it the way that is actually going to get a conviction if they find out that Shauna did this. So Kevin's a little more experienced. Then we go to 1996. Travis has sex with Nat, but he is seeing Lottie the entire time. Also, the trees outside drop a bunch of snow on Jackie's corpse, and it lowers the heat of the fire, let's say. Doesn't put it out, just sets it to a nice simmer.
So what did you think about Lottie showing up at that intimate moment?
I don't know what to think. I just kept flashing back in my head to when she calmed him.
Yeah.
Was that was last season? Near the end of last season.
No, that was just the last episode.
Was that last episode? Man.
You mean the boner?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That was last
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, my head kept flashing back to that. there's some kind of connection that formed from that, maybe emotionally, spiritually. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, when I first saw this, I thought it was odd. You know, it definitely has the effect and everything is weird. It's not very sexy. You know, like when you're watching it, you're like, wow, this is hot. You know, like this, it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, teen sex is never that sexy anyway.
Well, yeah, I
but
guess that's
sure.
I guess that's true. But the thing I was thinking about it though is that at first you can't help but think about it in that context, because Natalie, it's not the only thing that's going on with her, but she does have some regular teen jealousy, right? I mean, like she's worried. And so I was looking at it and I was like, well, yeah, but Lottie's not really there. Like she's kind of almost helping, you know, like she's not distracting him from Nat. She's sort of like just there to make sure that he's into it or something, like, and that they're, you know, everything is fine. And she's just sort of, yeah. And like you said the word spiritual, and that's sort of where I was at. I was like, either this is supernatural, like it's actually Lottie, you know, like being in his thoughts in that way, or it's just like the question of like, well, he's sort of torn in between, because he loves Nat. I mean, I think that part is pretty clear, and everything that's going on there is genuine. But then he also wants to believe that Javi's still alive, and Lottie's the one that can provide that for him right now. So, you know, it just kind of shows that he's more open to what's going on, what Lottie's offering than what Nat's offering. Then, you know, I read some of the stuff that they said about it after that, and that's kind of what they were going for, was that it's kind of like his internal conflict. Not that he wants to be with Lottie as his wife or his girlfriend or something like that instead of Nat, but just that he has this thing in his head where his heart is drawn away from her in some sense, in that he's looking for spirituality, if not maybe not supernatural, but the spiritual,
like guidance.
Yeah, something that will make him feel better than what the reality does, you know.
Which goes along nicely, you know, with the idea that Lottie was there during his death, right, and then Nat was not. I think they're reinforcing that with the stuff they're doing in the current day timeline.
Yeah, I mean, that would all make all that a whole lot more believable, that he called her and that she went there and all that stuff. Because at the end of season 1, none of that really would have made sense based on what we knew about the characters from each other, especially Nat's point of, like, you know, he didn't believe in any of that. Like, that was something that was pretty character defining, because we didn't know that much about adult Travis. So that's what we had to go off of, and just thought that, you know, those two were probably on one side, and it was in opposition to you know, Van and Lottie, and the ones that really believed in what she was doing.
Yeah, it was more complicated than that. I'm looking forward to seeing how we kind of get around to that, and I guess how he hides that from her, and what kind of relationship they had in the, you know, the current day timeline.
Yeah.
We kind of already talked about the supernatural snowdrop.
Yeah.
I don't know that we necessarily need to rehash it.
No, I mean, I just think the bottom line is that it looks like point of view. You know, it looks like that you're seeing this from the you know, the that something is making that happen, because there's no characters involved. You know, nobody else is seeing this. It's not distorted by anybody's interpretation. It's just something that we see as the viewer. That's for us. And to me, that's what I just, not against it. You know, I mean, if they want to go full supernatural, that can be fine. You know, I can get into a show that's about that. It just felt like it was way more direct than what I was expecting from, you know, Yellowjackets to this point.
Yeah, the one other time I can think that they've done something like this, which really kind of tipped a hand, is another POV shot where they show the thing, whatever it is, flying in the cabin of the window and kind of hitting Lottie when she's possessed, right? When they're doing the, like, seance thing or whatever.
You're right.
That was the one time they did like a POV. So maybe they're leaning into that again, trying to tell us more clearly, yeah, this is supernatural. Because it certainly felt it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's go back to current day. While they're driving, Simone gets a call from Sammy's school saying he's waiting for her to pick him up, which is weird. And Taissa realizes that Sammy never actually came to her house. Simone tells her, you need to get some help. But then they get into a massive car wreck. And this is where it all pays off. The shot of Taissa looking at herself in the mirror, the setup for these two scenes that we've had before with this, the weird Sammy that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Did she intend to get in a wreck?
I mean, it looks like it. It really does.
It really does, right? She's looking through the passenger, toward the passenger side.
So she can see
that's where the truck hits them.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
she would see that coming, right?
Yeah, unless she was just, and I mean, there's two possible choices. I mean, there's a question of who's actually driving at that point, which we can talk about in a second. But I mean, there's two possible choices here: that she's so, she's so sleep deprived that she's just out of it and she doesn't know what's going on, and so therefore she doesn't really see it. And the other one, the one that it really looks like, if you take it into consideration, the look that she gives right before she does it, the fact that she can't really hear, like we can hear Simone talking, but the sound is turned all the way down, so it's like she's not really even paying attention to it. And it seems like she hits the gas intentionally also, but I can't say for 100% that happens.
Yeah, I have to listen to hear if the engine cranks up there.
Yeah, but I think that's the more likely thing, is that saying that she did this on purpose.
Yeah, for me, it's almost entirely the look on her face that sells it. Like, it's so subtle, but it's there.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is Tawny Cypress showing us that Ty's in a different place, right? This is not a Ty look. Yeah. If you think back to season 1, episode 1, I should say, there's one where she's looking at Sammy, or not Sammy, but what's the dog's name? I can't remember.
Steve.
Yeah, good old Steve. Steve, who I'm very worried about, and hope nothing bad ever happens to him ever.
Sure.
Yeah, like there's a shot in that first episode where she's looking at him because he keeps barking and she's upset, and it's not the same person. You know what I mean? Like it's an angry look, but this is something that's just laser focused. And so I guess my question for you is then, does that indicate that we're seeing the bad Ty, the sleepwalking Ty in this moment?
Yeah, I think so. I really do think so. And I think the ends here is to get Sammy back.
Yeah, and Simone is in the way of that, right?
Yep. Yeah, and putting, a truck through the passenger side of this car where Simone is sitting is a pretty good way to get rid of her.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess, if you don't want to make it about Sammy, you could say that it's just about because I mean, Ty knows that something's going on with her with sleepwalking. It has since she was a teenager. And maybe it went away for most of her adult life until right now. But either way, the smart thing to do is what Simone is saying, right? Get help. Like, this is not something that you need to work through yourself, or just drink coffee and never fall asleep again. Like, you should probably go find out what's going on with you, right?
Yeah.
But there might be something going on where there's, this thing protects itself and its existence or whatever, and won't let her, go get help or be pushed in that direction. We don't really know yet.
Yeah. I wondered, I didn't rewind because I'm just thinking of this actually. I didn't rewind it to go see if there's like a continuity to her consciousness here. If like maybe you see her drift off, nod off or something in this scene before this, but it felt to me like one moment it was Taissa, the next moment it was the like evil
a switch
lady who
almost
sits in the tree, right?
Yeah, I don't think you can say for sure. I think it's left pretty ambiguous, because she might have just fell asleep before she saw Sammy. You know what I mean? And the whole thing might be fugue state related. If she's just calling Simone in the fugue state in the first place. But I don't think it really like differentiates it, unless I missed it. I mean, it's possible, but I didn't see anything.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really interested to see where that goes, because clearly, like, the darkness wants some people alive. The darkness wants things. If this is part of it, what does it want with Sammy, right? Because this, to me, feels like a way to get Simone out of the way so she can get Sammy back.
It definitely, that definitely is the most compelling reason why it would be happening.
Yeah,
because Sammy had a lot of interactions with the bad one before, as far as we can tell, with all the drawings and everything else. Like this, he's someone that really does know that it exists compared to not many other people in her adult life, anyways.
And he's kind of identified it as like a different person, right? Whereas like Simone sees the dog head altar and is like, "You're messed up. You need to go get help," but she thinks it's still Taissa.
Yeah.
Whereas her kid thinks it's somebody else entirely. All right, and let's go back to 1996 for the final time here in the episode. The teens wake up in the night to the smell of Jackie's corpse cooked to perfection. They all go outside, see it golden brown, and Shauna can't resist. She cuts off a piece, and everybody digs in as we see an imagined scene of them having a grand meal, a.k.a. a bacchanal, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm not up to date on my Greek mythology, but I understand this might be Dionysus sort of thing. Dionysus related.
Yeah, I think that's what the internet tells me when I look it up.
Me too. Which, if you don't know, the Dionysus, god of some good things, god of some bad things, fruit, harvest, fertility, festivity, insanity, ritual madness, religious ecstasy, and theater. I don't know, I'll throw that last one in there for good measure, I guess.
I think, from looking at, not through that lens, like looking at it just as a a television show that I'm watching currently. I mean, I think the thing that I would take away if I didn't look any of that stuff up is this: it's just kind of hedonistic, right? Like it's it's a bit over the top. It's this big, bountiful feast where everyone isn't just there to have a meal, but they're there to like really splurge and just sort of gorge themselves on all this great stuff, just because they can,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And doing it with exuberance, doing it without any restraint, I think it is sort of definitional in that sort of thing. And in this scene, and the way they juxtapose the feast they're having, in this bacchanal sort of thing, and the feast that they're having on Jackie's corpse is really disturbing.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it. This show has a way of like getting under my skin with that stuff in a way that few other shows do.
Yeah, what I really liked about it is that you're thinking about that. Like, this is something that I wouldn't fault them for doing this. There's the social taboo. It's the thing that you're not supposed to do, generally speaking. But I mean, if you're in the woods and you don't know if you're ever going to get caught, you're never going to get rescued, and for no fault of your own, you end up with this giant bit of roasted human flesh that's cooked to perfection.
Sure.
I mean, you got to survive, right? I mean, it's
100%.
It's not that surprising that they would do that. What is surprising is the way that they would try to make that work in their own memory of like, okay, we're now cannibals, because like being hungry and being satiated is not the same as reckoning with the fact that you ate Jackie, right?
Sure, your friend, yeah.
Your friend, and someone you knew, and that someday you might go back to civilization and people are going to want to know where Jackie is and what happened to her. And somebody might find out that this happened. So, I think what I really liked about the way they put this together was that it's about how they're dealing with the reality that they're in, and how they're trying to process in real time, like how are we going to how can we do this because we need to do this, but everything inside of us is telling us this is not something that we should be doing, that we should be ashamed of doing, or whatever. So I thought that was pretty fantastic. And I mean, it gave them the chance to really show them pigging out and really enjoying themselves.
Yeah, it was nice to see that scene where, they're not people who've been starving in the wilderness for 2 months. They're just enjoying themselves and having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
But like when the dam breaks, right? When Shauna leads them into this idea that it's okay to feast on Jackie, and that dam breaks, it's just more gleeful. It's more, there's something about it that just like makes me feel like they were sort of waiting to do this all along,
Yeah, let me ask you this question. If you were in the wilderness with just one other person and that person died, do you think it would be harder to eat that person by yourself or to eat this person with the group? Like, I kind of feel like the group would make it easier, right? Because as soon as one person does it, what do you think?
Yeah, you're sort of given tacit permission to do it. Whereas you can let somebody else give you permission to do it, as opposed to having to give yourself permission to do it.
Well, because that's what I think is kind of interesting, because she says she wants us to. And you can make an argument that maybe Jackie would want them to do that, but nothing about Jackie necessarily screams that. You know what I mean? Like it's certainly her way of spinning things so that she can cross the line. And like I said, if it's just you and another person in the woods, like, of course you're going to eventually do that. But I think you're going to have to really struggle with the decision in a way that you don't have to whenever it happens in a group setting. Because I mean, I just think about like being a teenager, and some of the dumbest things that I've ever done, they were all with other people who were also doing that same thing,
Yeah.
Like, I have
a big scar on my leg from a time where my friends and I were all behind the shed at my parents' house setting things on fire. And they got the bright idea to like start jumping through the fire.
Yeah.
And then they got the bright idea to start jumping through the fire while they were spraying lighter fluid into it so it would go up real big. Yeah, lighter fluid lands on your leg while you're jumping through a fire. You're going to catch on fire.
Yeah. There's...
I don't think I would have ever come up with that idea myself, is what I'm saying.
No, like you might have jumped over the fire one time and been like, oh, cool. And then walked away and never thought about it again. Get a couple of other people there and you're just trying to one up each other and everything else. So yeah, totally relatable.
Right. Who I couldn't help but think about in this final scene in a weird roundabout way is Jeff. Because Shauna wrote down all the things she did in her diaries, and Jeff
read them.
Was Jackie's boyfriend at the time.
Yeah.
Who was cheating on her with Shauna, and then Shauna had to eat Jackie. And actually, like, I wonder how honest the journals are. Like, well, I cut off her ear first, and I tried that. It was pretty good. But I thought, you know what might taste better? Her arm. And then I thought, well, now she's golden brown, so I gotta just go for it. Jeff, what does Jeff think of his wife at that point? Because he seems okay with it. He's like, when he talks to her about it, he's like, it's such a tragedy, like all the things you had to do, He feels bad for her.
So yeah, I think he knows that they ate Jackie.
I
mean, that's implied, wouldn't you say?
I think so. Yeah.
When he says all those things, like I think he knows that she did that. It would be interesting to figure out exactly how she wrote about it and what he knows specifically. I mean, maybe it doesn't really matter. I mean, whenever I saw that scene in the first season, what I thought it was saying to us is that he still loves her anyways. That was like sort of the important thing, was that even though he knows she's not perfect and she did some bad things, that they're still their bond goes beyond just the fact that they were cheating, and they felt guilty about it, so they stayed together for all those years. They have something really between them, is the way that I interpreted it at that time. But yeah, you're right. I mean,
how is he so well adjusted? Like coming back from this, knowing that his girlfriend he was cheating on his actual girlfriend with ate that girl. Like how does he stay so well adjusted? I guess is the question.
I mean, you could say how well adjusted he is, though. I mean, he did blackmail them because he was going to lose his business that wasn't that good. Yeah. I kind of tend to forget that whenever I think about him, because he is sort of like the sidekick husband that is, generally just there to build her up whenever they need that. You know what I mean? But he is like he's dealt with some injustices in the relationship, and so you kind of have his back for that. But we can't really forget the fact that he did go straight to blackmailing her friends, their teammates, whenever he needed to get out of a tough situation.
Yeah, instead of talking to her. That's okay, not as well adjusted as I remembered.
But I mean, he's he's still pretty solid there as far as that relationship goes. So,
well, we talked so much about the darkness. I think it struck back, because you're not going to hear from Pete for the rest of this podcast. They took out his power. The darkness. I don't know if it was maybe a truck crashed into a transformer somewhere. I don't know what happened, but he's gone. Hopefully not for good. His power just went out. So anyway, we were pretty much done with the podcast. We wanted to talk a little bit about Coach Ben's reaction, but we won't be able to do that. At some point, they're definitely going to eat the coach. That's all I have to say about that. Can't wait to see it happen. There won't be as much of him to eat as there was before the plane took off, but what can you do? There'll be plenty to go around. Anyway, that's the end of the show. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We're not going to do feedback today, obviously. So if you did want to send us some feedback on this episode, you can still do that at yellowjackets@baldmove.com. That's the email address. Send everything you got over there, and Aaron will compile that next week when he is back for episode 3. Until then, that's going to do it from the Bureau of Citizen Detectives. I'm Jim, and that would have been Pete. Hopefully still is Pete. Until next time, see ya.